Hey everyone, welcome back to the shop. It's great to have you here. One of the things I do in my RC hobby is I often have to deal with cutting down really thin, fragile materials. And using the large woodworking machines sometimes just is overkill or sometimes just dangerous. So I needed to find an easy way to make repeatable cuts, clean cuts, without hand sawing with an X-Acto or a razor saw every time. I was at Harbor Freight and picked up one of their miniature chop saws, which by themselves aren't that great, but I'm going to see if I can make it a little bit better and make it useful for cutting down these materials to precise lengths. Let's jump right in.
So this is a unit I picked up from Harbor Freight. It's a small little cutoff saw or chop saw, and it has just a small little clamp-in section that you can use to support the material. But it's really hard to see exactly where you're cutting, and it's even harder to get an exact length of material because you're trying to measure, you're trying to line up the saw, and it's just really hard to get it right the first time, let alone repeatable cuts. So the first thing we need to do is go raid the plywood cutoff stash. Alright, the next thing I want to take a look at is how's the best way to mount this. Now it does have a miter adjustment on the clamp, so I wanted to preserve that. So I'm going to stick this down in the lower left corner. The next item of concern was I wanted to make sure I had at least 12 inches of cutting area, so I measured out 13 inches and drew a line so I knew where I could cut off this board. With the board cut to length, I could secure it down with a couple of 1-inch drywall screws. Next, I took the cutoff from the same board and placed it up against the base of the saw. Here I wanted to see how close we were to the ridge on the built-in clamp. It had a little bit of a gap, so I grabbed a piece of 1/8 inch plywood, put it on top, and that was pretty much perfect for keeping this level across the board. But as you see, we push it in tight. There's enough room for the saw to move, but there's a little gap and that plywood can bend down. So take another scrap piece of 1/8 inch ply, cut it to size, put it in between, make sure the miter still works, and then we can slide the 1/8 inch on right on top. It all fits together to keep it nice and level. So with that done, mark it square with the edge of the board. So we can take it over the table saw and trim it to length. But this time I made sure to cut down all the 1/8 inch pieces as well, so it was all ready to glue up. Now this is the obligatory part of the video where I lost footage, but as you see, I've got the pieces all glued together with the small spacer piece glued to the top. And then it should fit right on top and next to the saw. Knowing that I might need to service or replace the saw at some point, I didn't want to glue this all together, so I gave myself a reference line, drilled some holes, and secured it together with a few construction screws. Next I wanted to work on a fence and a stop block so that I could have material cut to length precisely. So I drew a reference line and then test fit some material. It was a little tall, so we needed to go ahead, get it measured up, and cut down at the table saw. Now the fence was at the appropriate height and fit in place, but I wanted to make sure that I could measure the distance from the saw easily. So I tested to see where our marks would be and our lengths were, and then it was time to head off to the lathe. We used an online program to create an SVG file of a 13-inch ruler using 16th-inch marks, and then I was able to send the job off to the laser. We had a quick test fit to make sure everything lined up right and that our marks would be in alignment, and then it was time to glue it down. I used CA along with some wood glue to make sure it got set in place correctly, but the wood glue would help keep it stronger than just the CA alone. Next up, I needed to cut down some pieces to create a stop block for the fence that we just created. However, it's not best to have the tripod sitting on the outfeed table as you get a little bit of vibration in the video. Pieces cut, I wrapped a little wax paper over the fence and went ahead and just used some CA and some accelerator to get these pieces glued together. The wax paper acts as just enough of a gap to allow it to slide easily and also prevents the CA from sticking to the plywood. As you see, it pops right off. Next I needed to figure out a way to hold the stop block in place, so I went to our favorite spot, our hardware collection, to see what I had. Lo and behold, I had 1/4 20 thumb screw left. There it is. Let's see what we can do. I'm using cabinet grade Baltic birch here, so I figured I'd give it a shot of tapping it for a 440. A little trick to strengthen the threads in wood is to use some thin CA, I'm using Star Bond here, to soak into the threads, which hardens them up. You just need to make sure that the glue is fully cured, and try your thumb screw again. It should work great and not strip out the threads. Block slides back on the fence. We're going to lock it in at 6 inches and give it a test cut. And there you go, 6 inches right on the nose. That will work great for me.
This is one of those projects where you just kind of grab the materials you have and just start putting them together and seeing where it leads you. It was great having you along with me in the shop. I hope you learned something. If you have a question or a comment for me, go ahead and leave something down below. And if you'd like to see more of what I'm doing in my workshop, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.